Thanks for your patience. Great to see everyone on this beautiful day. So the first, this is Adams Morgan ANC 1C's Planning, Zoning, and Transportation Committee meeting. We have the full committee here, and our only item on our agenda tonight is to hear from the Adams Morgan bid about their very exciting plan for a pilot of a pedestrian zone on 18th Street. So I think, Gordon, you can promote Brian, David Levy, and Kristen Barden.
Gotcha.
Hey, everybody. Excuse me. Hey, everybody.
Hey, everybody.
And I'll just note before they get started, I'll put the link in the chat to the agenda where the materials they are sharing are linked as well. So people can have access to them after this meeting if you're interested. But all right, Kristen, all right. Brian, David, go for it.
Yeah, great. Yeah. So David Levy is our consultant on this project. And I know Megan, Jake, and Howard, you've seen him on our weekly advisory committee meetings already a couple times. So I'm going to have him kind of walk us through. Brian and I are here to help answer questions, of course. But I know a number of you are pretty familiar with this project already. So so we'll have I think David, are you gonna share documents too?
Yeah, I'll definitely share some materials with you, and excuse me. And as we go through, we'll update you on the process. Some of you have been on this call, so you sort of know where we are. Anyway, I'm pleased to join you. I'm also your neighbor. I live in Columbia Heights in ANC 1A, and Adams Morgan is part of my neighborhood too. So I'm pleased to be working here. Okay, I can share my screen from here, correct?
You should be able to.
Okay, let's see. Bear with me just a second. Okay. Let's go ahead and start here. Can you see this drawing okay? So you already know, kind of where the project is, obviously here between the two blocks of 18th Street that we're proposing to close to vehicles 1 weekend a month. For a period of months throughout the rest of the year. We're still working toward a permit in June, but we don't, it's sort of day by day on that. So we'll update you as we can, but we're still aiming for a weekend in June, not yet agreed upon with the city. We are actively coordinating with these agencies that you see here on the left side of the screen. On a regular basis, and some of these folks are attending the weekly meetings as well. But what I want to focus on is the activities that are underway currently, and I've done some quick sketches that we can use as a visual that I'll show you in just a moment. But essentially, we have currently ongoing a traffic study. The traffic study is determining the impacts of closing this section of 18th Street for 1 weekend a month, and it includes a look at converting Kalorama and Wyoming into a one-way pair for those who have been interested in that. Excuse me. It also includes, some folks have asked whether it includes traffic coming to and from the parking garage between 18th Street and Champlain, and yes, it does. I apologize, I've been on meetings all day, my voice is about gone, so please bear with me. We're also talking to the city about to give us a clear permitting path. We've yet to receive that, but we've been talking again on a daily basis with these agencies and to just sort of, help, move us in the right direction. So all those kind of activities are underway. We're also working with DDOT to review the proposed permanent barriers that are to go in the streets for closure. And we're also looking at new seating in the plaza at 18th at the, I don't know if you call it the plaza in the northeast corner of 18th and Columbia, where new trees were recently planted. And we'll talk about that tonight as well. So that's just a quick summary. I'm going to share a different document here.
Great. Well, while David does that, for the general public's information, we're able to do this at this point in large part due to a grant that we received from the Office of Planning. The grant is $525,000. This is ARPA money. It's federal infrastructure money. So, and one of the caveats in this grant is that 75% of that 525,000 is actually spent on infrastructure. So that's why this project was really perfect for this grant, because so much of the cost of this is installing the permanent hydraulic barriers in the roadway. So. And as David mentioned, you know, we're sort of running on two tracks. One is to get the approvals done and ready, hopefully for a June street closure that we'll have to use dump trucks or something like that. But eventually we want to install these permanent barriers that would be hydraulic and would raise and lower with the turn of a key. And so, but the grant wants us to start activating the space and getting these rolling as soon as possible. So the permanent installation of the barriers is of course going to take a bit longer. So, you know, we're coming to you now with the hope that we will be able to do this and for one weekend in June, and then one weekend each month, probably through November, through the warm weather months. We would not try to do this in the dead of winter.
Thanks for that. You know, and my apologies, I forget we're in a public meeting and there are people on the call who haven't been involved in these conversations. So my apologies for not giving more background.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I should have done it at the beginning. So I thought about it a little late.
Okay, no worries. That's all good. So, and you know, we're working with the Office of Planning. This is a grant through the Office of Planning. We're also working with DDOT, working with the Office of For-Hire Vehicles, the Metropolitan Police Department, DPW, I'm probably forgetting somebody.
WMATA.
WMATA as well. We're looking at, with WMATA, specifically, we're looking at how we might reroute the 90 and 96 buses through this area on those weekends. And, you know, what impacts that might have on riders and travel times, and, you know, how we can creatively route the buses to keep everything on track. So we're working actively with WMATA as well.
Yeah.
So just to kind of review what we're planning on doing, if you can see my screen, I'm now showing you the intersection of Columbia Road and 18th Street. And this is just a sketch. We're having a traffic control plan done, as I said, which is required to get our permit. This will be based in part on the traffic study that we're also doing. And essentially this is how will we set up signs and barriers and alert motorists to, excuse me, to the fact that the street is closed once a month, 1 weekend a month. So if you see this currently, if you look at the slide, the blue just represents with the crosswalks just diagrammatically. The barrier at this location would go north of the crosswalk so that the crosswalk is behind the barrier. And then we would try to establish 2 pickup drop-off zones for rideshare and also like Uber Eats, DoorDash kind of delivery services. And we would manage those PUDO zones with staff from the Office of For-Hire Vehicles and potentially from the Department of Public Works. And we're still working out the details of that as well. And then everything south of the crosswalk would be closed to vehicles, including buses, but pedestrians, cyclists, and users of other devices would be allowed, non-motorized devices. Okay, I'm gonna show you the next chunk of the street. I broke it up into chunks in order to be able to share it, excuse me, in greater detail. It's the same one, yeah? I know.
Yeah, oops, it's a little blurry.
What are you seeing the same? Is this one's blurry?
No, that looks okay.
Okay. So this is just to the south. coming down 18th Street. So this area where you see my cursor is closed to vehicles. It's open to pedestrians and cyclists and such. We would put barriers at each of these alleys. This alley known as Hoffman Alley. Is this one Dance Alley? Do I have it yet?
Yes. Mhm. Yep, that's right.
Hoffman Alley and Dance Alley there would be barriers at this location and this location. So Dance Alley would be closed at this point. Hoffman Alley would be open behind the barrier to allow for access to the florist and also to help accommodate the frequent three-point turns that are occurring there that might be exacerbated by our street closure. And we're working with our traffic engineer to understand what would happen if this traffic is diverted south to Kalorama during this 1 weekend a month closure.
And the traffic study that David referred to was something that DDOT requested that we do in large part because of the plans to convert Wyoming one way and Kalorama one way. So which we know is not imminent. That probably isn't likely to happen, I think, until sometime next year, next calendar year. But in anticipation of that happening, DDOT wanted us to do this traffic study. So, and we will have that initial draft probably by the end of next week.
Okay, this is Belmont Road. We're taking a close look at Belmont Road with our traffic engineer because we would like to close Belmont Road at the intersection of 18th Street, which would require us to remove some on-street parking to allow U-turns to occur. This would temporarily change Belmont Road from one way to two ways during the closure period. So because of that, we asked our traffic engineer to take a really close look at this idea and give us some recommendations about whether this makes sense, and if not, what else we might consider to close Belmont. So I'll keep going, and then perhaps we can come back for questions or comments. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so we can come back to any of these drawings. I'm just gonna switch to the south end of the street for a moment so we can see all of it. If I can figure out how to drive this. There we go. So here I'm just repeating Belmont. This is the same information you just saw. Then there's an alley south of Belmont, the name of which escapes me. What's the nickname of this one?
Oh, I don't think that one has a name.
Oh, okay. This alley by the post office would also be closed at 18th Street. And then finally at the end of the street, I'm showing Kalorama one-way westbound here only because we presented this as part of the traffic study the other day, but it's obviously two-way street right now. The barrier would be located here south of the crosswalk, so the crosswalk is protected. And we'd have an additional pickup drop-off zone on the east side of the street by Marie Reed. And all of these, again, PUDO zones would be actively managed so that only used by rideshare and food pickup and delivery services. Okay, I also want to talk about a few other items, but should we pause here and ask for questions? We have the bus rerouting to discuss and some other items.
Yeah, sure. We can pause here. Jake has his hand up.
Thanks. For the PUDO zones on the north side of 18th, where the barrier is going to be, has there been any consideration of actually increasing the PUDO zone from just the 2 spots north of McDonald's to also include maybe 2 or 3 spots north of the barrier that is going to shut off 18th? Because there's going to be no need for traffic to go down into 18th. So you might actually pick up a little bit of space there and have an additional 2 to 3 spots.
Oh, in front of 18th Street itself. Sorry, Kristen.
Oh, yeah, no, that's okay. So the dump truck that will be stationed there will be staffed and will be running, because in the event of an emergency, it will need to move immediately so that emergency vehicles can get through. So that will be prohibited. That would not be possible.
Yeah, I should have said or reiterated that our plan for the initial closures is to use dump trucks or other large trucks that are manned actively for that purpose, to act as gates and barriers at the same time. And then ultimately, excuse me, we would replace those with the in-the-ground barriers, which are meant to, to be sort of a pilot, to test this kind of temporary pedestrianization of streets in the district. So our goal is to do something that could be used, that could tell us and teach us something about this citywide.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And the Office of Planning is very interested in, if this is successful, if this works, that they'd want to, repeat this in other parts of the city. Yeah. Howard has his hand up.
Oh, thanks. Just two quick questions. I might have missed this a minute ago. Do you know when the barriers are going to arrive? I know they're coming over from Israel, I believe.
Yeah, we have not ordered them yet because we don't have all of the permits yet in place. So we have not placed that order yet.
My other question at this point, and I'll have like a broad question at the end after other folks have asked. I understand, I saw a couple of guys laying down cables for a traffic count on California Street this afternoon. That's what they told me they were doing. Is that you guys?
No, California Street is not us.
I kind of wondered because, we're at the edge of the action, so to speak.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah. No, that's.
Sorry, Kristen.
Oh yeah, no, we did do that a couple weekends ago, but California Street was not part of that.
Just curious. Thank you.
We did counts, just for information, on 18th Street and also turning movement counts for intersections north and south of 18th Street.
Mm-hmm.
Should I move on and just show you the bus movements or the bus?
Yeah, unless there are other commissioners that have questions.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not paying attention very well.
And I've been trying to monitor the chat too.
Yeah, and if members of the public have questions as well, I think feel free to raise your hands. But if not, we can move forward.
Good. All right, now we're still in discussions with both WMATA and DDOT about bus routing. So this is where we are as of today. We are talking about several, as some of you may know, we're talking about several other alternatives. Our goals include minimizing disruption for bus passengers, including increasing their travel times and making the walk to the bus stops inappropriately long. So we're measuring walk sheds. We're really taking a close look about the effect this might have on bus riders. That said, because of certain restrictions in turning movements where we would potentially prefer to route the buses, this is the plan that's currently on the table from WMATA that we're sharing tonight. And that is that the buses will essentially bypass 18th and Calvert Streets and will be routed to Florida and Connecticut.
Sorry, David, 18th and Columbia Road.
Sorry, 18th and Columbia Road. Beg your pardon.
They would travel on Calvert.
Right. And actually, I think you can see my cursor. Can you?
Yeah.
These stops that are shown on this plan would actually be open. And this is a revision WMATA is working on. So the buses would turn around here. There would also be a stop here, and then they would come back down Connecticut Avenue.
Mm-hmm, right.
We are working with them on several other alternatives that we're hoping will provide benefits this plan does not, but we don't know really what they're ultimately going to agree to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're negotiating with DDOT still. Ideally, we'd want to keep the buses on Columbia Road and not run them over to Connecticut Avenue. They would make that left from Columbia, California, and then left on Connecticut. The issue is that they would then have to quickly get over into the far left lane to make that another left onto T Street to connect into Florida Avenue. So right now they're still trying to figure out if that's feasible. So the other thing missing from this map is a temporary bus stop that would be on Florida Avenue, just to the west of 18th Street. And that would be for the buses heading eastbound. And then there's a pair bus stop already that exists right under the U and U Street there, yeah, where David has his cursor. So there's already a bus stop there heading westbound. So this would be a pair heading eastbound on Florida just before 18th. And for that temporary bus stop, we would need to take out a couple of parking spaces, and we would put, you know, hoods over the parking meters, and no parking signs and all of that, so that it's very clear that that's a temporary bus stop. Deb, I think, Deb, did you have your hand up?
Oh, yeah. Well, I guess you answered that partly. My question, I guess, initially was about why it's the current proposals to route onto Connecticut versus Columbia. You know, I guess I was hoping to see Columbia Road, and I realize that that's still in discussion. But just because I'm sure we'd agree, you know, like if we were able to route onto Columbia, it would have, you know, significantly less disruption to bus users.
Oh yeah, we agree 100%.
Yeah. Do you mind clarifying one more time? You said something about left turning onto T or something. That's the issue.
Oh, yeah. So the reroute that we would hope, and the 42 bus already does this, but the 42 doesn't then need to make that next sharp left on Connecticut onto T. So T Street runs from Connecticut right in front of the Hilton, and then connects into Florida. So
Here,
yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, so the reroute that we think is ideal would mean a left onto Connecticut and then another sharp left onto T, that would then connect the bus onto Florida. So it's that second left onto T that DDOT and WMATA are still negotiating.
I see. Okay. Thanks.
They're taking a very hard look at it. They're looking at
Yeah.
bus turning movements to see if they can get the buses safely through the turns, and looking at traffic volumes. You know, it's
Right, yeah. And they, in our meeting with, you know, in our advisory committee meeting that we had with everyone today, WMATA mentioned that they want to do some auto turns, and then do some real life testing of it too, to make sure that the bus drivers are comfortable with that. Because one thing to keep in mind is the bus rerouting each one of these pedestrian zone weekends will be in place for the entire weekend, not just for the hours that the street is closed. So, because WMATA, you know, for their bus drivers and for users of the bus system, it's less confusing if it's like a whole weekend that that there's a reroute rather than, you know, some specific hours that no one knows what they are. So it would be an all weekend thing.
Got it. Thanks for clarifying.
Yeah, sure. Jake.
And just to confirm, there's no way to do Florida to 19th to Columbia Road?
No, it's too narrow. Yeah, and they need a double yellow line in the middle. And 19th Street is too narrow.
Okay, thank you.
But yeah, that was discussed also. Okay, are there any other questions about the bus rerouting options? There's a question in the chat. Let's see. No, they have not looked into splitting them up. Yeah, they have not. I think they see 16th Street as too far away, to be honest. I think they want to keep the reroute a little bit closer. I think they, you know, my impression that, excuse me, from DDOT's and WMATA's discussions is that they think 16th Street is a little bit too far. That has not been part of the discussions. Okay. Are there any other questions? Okay. All right. So David, you want to go on to the next part?
okay. All right. So figure out this. Okay. So remember, and I apologize again for not giving much background, but the purpose of this grant is called the Streets for People Grant. And the purpose of the grant is to activate the city's public spaces, in particular to reactivate them, re-energize them, and to bring patrons back, following the shutdown during the pandemic and et cetera, during the last couple of years. So the project includes the barriers, but the barriers are just to close the streets so that we can close street to vehicles that open them up to pedestrians and have more space for pedestrians and cyclists, and to attract more, frankly, more patrons for the businesses. As part of this project, and is included an idea that was born out of a Adams Morgan plan from 2016, which is to improve the plaza in the northeast corner of Columbia and 18th Street, which is by, I guess, what is a Truist Bank now, maybe is the brand, across the street north of McDonald's. So the city has, as you know, recently put some trees into the plaza, and there's been other improvements made over the last several years. This grant includes money to buy seating that was envisioned for that plaza. And I'm showing you the seating that's being proposed here. And these are essentially 50 by 50 by 50 inches and 16 inches in height. I believe they're actually concrete, or are they stone? I think they're concrete.
Yeah, Brian, do you know?
I said we weren't going to put them on the spot. I think they're concrete, but they have a stone appearance to them. Mm-hmm. And I believe also I've seen something similar to this, maybe over in Eckington in place. But this is a drawing, and Kristen, I don't remember the genesis of this drawing, but this is a rendering aerial view of the stones in place among the trees. And this is also showing, I guess, large Christmas present display or holiday decoration.
Yes, that's right.
This
Go
is
ahead,
taken
Brian.
from the DDOT plan for the tree planting. So we just took this to use as a base to show where the benches might be. And we put the holiday boxes in because we've had this there the last couple of years and people seem to really enjoy it. But as, kind of points of reference.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. And one thing also to note, the Capital Bike Share bike rack that's there, that's got a dotted red line because that's supposed to move to be parallel to that new planting box that DDOT installed. So yeah, David's pointing his cursor there. And DDOT's supposed to move that sometime in June. So that was part of the original plan. And when they move it there, they will actually be able to add a few more bikes. They will have more room. So that's the incentive for moving it, is to expand it.
I heard today it's scheduled for June 9th. So it's pretty soon.
Oh, okay. Okay, good. Yeah.
So you see here that these are the tree pits with the permeable pavement around each one of them. And then these are the Christmas presents for reference. And then these are the 3 benches that would be placed essentially among the trees. And the idea being that they would ultimately be in a shaded plaza. And they're also out of the pedestrian traffic that's moving around the space. And so conceptually, that's what we'd like to do.
Right. Yeah. And I know a number of people have gotten in touch with us about the condition of the trees. I know some people think they might be dead already. And we've been in touch with the Ward 1 forester in the Urban Forestry Administration at DDOT. And they're crepe myrtle trees, and she will she inspected them last week, and she will inspect them again in a couple weeks in June. She doesn't believe they are dead, but she wants to confirm that in a couple of weeks if there's still no growth on them. So I know people were concerned, and as are we. We've been watering them. So if they have not survived, then DDOT will need to replace them in the fall. The spring planting season has already passed. So the next opportunity to replace them would be in the fall. Yeah, so yeah, these are very heavy concrete benches that would not be easily moved. Brian, I know, has the weight on them, but they would not be, installed with anything, but they are super heavy and would not, people would not be able to move them.
Yeah, I think they're about 2,500 pounds, these, and they would be placed with a crane.
Right.
And the finish has not been decided. So you're just seeing the sort of stock photo here, that there are multiple finishes available. Any comments or questions? I don't know, this is an ANC meeting, so Megan, tell me what's appropriate to do.
I think whenever you're ready to take questions or comments, yeah, if people want to raise their hands.
Okay.
I think sort of every section, if there are questions. Yeah, Commissioner Felsenthal.
Hey, okay. Okay, one quick question. I really love the addition of new seating in the plaza. I think that's going to be so nice to have. I'm curious if there was any consideration. I know you mentioned like not being able to move things as a bonus, but I just know like some other BIDs have done those like having like a couple tables and chairs that are like that are lightweight and movable. I'm curious if there was any consideration to that.
We didn't really consider that. We had a pretty tight budget for this, so we were mostly focused on putting some interesting seating, in the plaza. That's something that we could consider at some point. But we had a pretty strict budget on this.
We've looked at things like that in the past. One of the handicaps that we have compared to some other bids is that most of the bid staff is on this call. So whereas, downtown and Golden Triangle, Georgetown, they have a lot more bodies to bring out chairs and then take them back every night. And it's a little trickier for us.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, they tend to walk away.
Yeah, that's the thing about movable tables and chairs, is that if they're not secured some way or packed up every evening or after an event, they do tend to walk away. So we wanted something that was very sturdy, and also these are graffiti resistant, so they'd be easy to clean, which was another consideration that we had in figuring out something that's appropriate for that space. So, and we liked how they looked, kind of natural, like they sort of belonged there. They look like stone, even though they're not. Yeah, and eventually, when the trees got bigger, they, would provide some shade.
Cool. Yeah, I think it's a great look. Yeah, thanks for answering that. I was just curious.
Are there other questions? I don't think I can see if anyone has their hand up. I don't know how to look.
Yeah, it doesn't look like anyone else does at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
I think, that's all the materials that we intended to share with you tonight. I do think, Kristen, correct me if I'm wrong, that we're hoping to receive a reminder of the ANC support of the project, which would help us when we go for our permits. And we're trying to put our permitting together right now. So if the ANC does still support this great project, and if you would like to write a letter of support, I think that would be helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's right. Howard has his hand up.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I've only been on the commission for a few months, but I certainly support this project and I want it to be successful. And I think, Adams Morgan has kind of had a break of sorts in that COVID changed a lot of things in terms of who's got your street fronts and what consumers are used to doing. And now that that's all changing, it gives Adams Morgan a little bit of an opportunity to sort of re-image itself going forwards. And I think this is going to be a key part of that. But I wanted to wait till the end till you had a chance to run through everything and explain the details to folks on the call, because I've been doing your weekly calls for a few months now at the urging of my predecessor, who said I should tune into this stuff. And you guys really have done a lot. I mean, it's very, very granular discussions, and I'm also glad to see a couple of our constituents with specialized expertise, participating and helping with traffic counts and other issues that come up. But I wanted to go back to the very beginning, because I'm curious how you are going to avoid going through the mayor's special event task group. I know that's come up in the past several calls, and the MPD sent over the guide to how this stuff works, which was I skimmed over, and it was very interesting. But the first thing that jumps off the page is, you've got to send a letter of intent no less than 180 days before the event's supposed to take place. And obviously, you're talking about June, and I'm very glad you seem to be moving away from doing it Pride weekend, because I just thought that was too much for the city to handle, frankly, at this point in time. But tell me, what are you telling the mayor's office to try to get around those requirements, and what are you thinking scheduling going forward? I sense that this is going to take a long time, and I want to see it done right, because I want it to be successful. And going forward, people say, "Oh, this was a great idea. The first one was, really excellent. We'd like to do this again." And everybody was on board, and all the bureaucratic pieces were moving in unison, and everybody had a good weekend. So that's my sort of global question here. What's the regulatory aspect of all this?
Yeah, sure. So, David, let me just take a stab at this first, and then I'd love for you to chime in also. So some of you may remember the closure that the mayor did in June 2020. So right after the city moved into phase 2 of recovery from the pandemic, it was one of the last weekends in June. The mayor closed the street with very little notice. I think we had like 5 days notice maybe. And, businesses were scrambling to get staff. And that's when also DDOT brought the concrete barriers to form the streeteries. So that all happened, pretty fast. So that was a good, initial pilot test of this concept, right? Like, so the mayor closed 18th Street between Calorama and Columbia Road. And, they used dump trucks for that. They kept Belmont Road open for that, and forced cars to go to the right and go out to Calorama. And that was monitored with a police car there, I think, that just moved as cars, needed to get out. So we have that pilot, right, that the mayor did pretty much on her own, right?
That didn't run through the task group?
No.
Okay.
So no, the mayor did that, and the city paid for all of it. So that, that was sort of our trial run, so to speak, right? And that was very successful. The businesses loved it. It brought a lot of people to the neighborhood, just when, businesses really needed a shot in the arm to keep going, because they had been closed for a number of months at that point. So so we know that this can be done, right? Because, the mayor did it once in June 2020. Now we have been told by some folks in DC government that this does not require going to the mayor's special events task group or the MedSeg. Others are saying that it does. So that's what we're currently trying to figure out. And my understanding is that there's some very high level people that are discussing it, but we don't have a clear, permitting path forward quite yet. And David, do you want to add to that?
I think that was a great summary. I would just add that, this grant is coming through the city agencies that report to the mayor, and those agencies, and therefore we will take our direction from the mayor's office and whatever decision they come up with. And if it's mayor's event, we'll work with whatever the answer is, I guess.
Yeah, the mayor's office of planning is funding this, so so they're all eager to figure out a path forward.
Right.
let me take this chance to welcome David Levy. He joined you guys a few weeks ago, and I'm glad to see you've got somebody on point on this, because as I said, this has a whole lot of moving parts, and it just takes one snafu these days for things to, blow up in the city government's face and people start pointing fingers, and you know how all that goes. So I guess my advice is, this is a good time to sort of under promise and overperform, and don't rush this just for the sake of rushing it. I'd rather wait a month or two and have all the wheels turn properly than rush.
Yeah, unfortunately,
something
there's a little bit of a mandate that came with the money that we have to do some closings. Ideally, something like this, you'd have a year to plan it and whatever and all that. And I mean, the good news is we've basically been planning it for 2 years since they closed it the first time, as best we could. But yeah, but as it is now, it's dealing with all the the hoops that the DC government puts in front of us, and
I mean, ever since that initial closure in June 2020, we've been trying to figure out how to do this again and do it frequently. Until this funding became available, it really wasn't feasible. So, I mean, the costs to us would have been prohibitively high. But this grant funding through the Streets for the People, which is federal ARPA money, specifically for infrastructure, was the perfect opportunity to get permanent infrastructure installed, so that the costs to the city are minimal to do this on a regular basis. And the Office of Planning loved this idea. So because it really fits the purpose of this grant and of the and of the ARPA funding. So this was really the only opportunity we've had since that June 2020 closure to seriously consider this, just because the expenses were too high.
Okay, well, good. I appreciate all that, and look forward to seeing this move forward. Thank you.
Oh, Jake, I think you have your hand up.
Thanks. I have 3 things. One's a quick question. Is there a date by which the federal ARPA money has to be spent?
This round, yep, it's January.
Okay.
January 2023.
So that is need to really get this moving and forward. That makes sense.
Yep.
Second is, if we're trying to encourage families and folks to come out and actually use the street, I know that we have to maintain the street for availability for police and fire vehicles, but is there a way that we can make the hard surface of the street more attractive for families and other folks in the neighborhood to come out and set up shop? I'm thinking like roll out turf or anything like that could just make it a little bit more attractive for folks to come out and set up shop.
Yeah, we do have to maintain a 20-foot fire lane in the center of the street, which with the streeteries on both sides in that section, really all that's left is about 20 feet in the center of the road. So we are prohibited from putting anything in that space, because should a fire truck or an ambulance need to get through, they're going to come right through. So now people mingling around, can move out of the way, but anything else, we're prohibited from doing. So, we are going to do some entertainment. Megan and you and Fiona and Amir Irani, who was a previous ANC commissioner, are all part of a committee that's working on entertainment, right, for the zone that would be sort of pop-up kind of entertainment that would be mostly moving, right, because we can't have anything stationary. Which provides, some interesting, opportunities to do dance workshops and to have some unicyclers and some jugglers and and a penny farthing. I didn't know what penny farthing was, but I do now. That's somebody riding on one of those huge 2-wheeled bicycles. It's a huge front wheel and a really small tiny wheel. So that's penny farthing. So that kind of entertainment is we'll be able to do in this area. And we also have some funding for that too. And we'd love to do some, folkloric dance exhibits, And, we have some contacts of groups that would be able to offer those services too. So, Jake, I wish I could say yes, that, putting down some kind of, temporary surface, whether it's like rubber mats or something else like that would be allowed, I think it sounds great, but I just don't know if the city would see it as an impediment.
It might be possible. I mean, we obviously have to check with FEMS and find someone who has a room for a 1,000-foot roll of AstroTurf in their garage. I mean, and willingness to have fire truck tracks on it.
Yeah.
I very much appreciate those answers. And either way, we'll be pulling out the kids and they can come and ride their bikes or their scooters in a space that's open to them where they don't have to worry about getting hit by a car. And I really appreciate that. And then the last thing was just going to be to say, I fully support this as well. It's a wonderful idea. The work that you all are doing is so important and I really appreciate it. I'm happy to move to support a letter coming up in front of our June meeting. If that is something that the chair would recognize as a friendly amendment, as some sort of letter that we draft in the meantime, that would just be in support of doing this for for the weekends that you propose through the rest of the year. But if we want to wait to do it in July, I'm in support of that too. So either way, supportive, thankful, and really appreciate this presentation and the professional manner with which you've gone about all this.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think I see someone with a question, but I'll just add, Commissioner Falaschini, that I also very much support this. I think I've been excited about this since the 2020 closure, and I talked a lot about it when I was running for ANC, as I know a lot of my fellow commissioners did as well. I believe we will have to have I was actually just checking our bylaws. I believe we'll have to have a vote ahead, a first vote to say that it won't be adverse to the community, since we didn't give notice that there was since we didn't give notice ahead of time that we'd be voting on something, but then we can vote and advance it to the June meeting. I'm also seeing a note that since we've previously done a resolution of support, they could probably just send a fresh letter stating that support. So I think we can vote today to put it on the agenda for June, and we can work out whether we need to do a new letter or anything like that. But whatever, I think we definitely will want to consider it in June.
Sure. Yeah, and we included the ANC's previous letters of support in our proposal that we submitted to the Office of Planning.
Great. And so I think go ahead.
Hi, this is Dennis James. Am I being heard?
Yes, go ahead, Dennis.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so, the Calorama, just for those who may be listening who don't know me, I'm the president of the Calorama Citizens Association, and we have resolved twice against the closing of 18th Street for very good reasons. And a lot of them are to do with the inconvenience which will be, foisted upon the residents of Calorama Road in both directions. All the northbound traffic on 18th Street will have to go left or right when it gets to Calorama. And that'll be a steady stream of vehicles. And we already have busy times on these streets with lots of noise, people parking and coming back to their cars late at night, playing their music very loudly, a lot of whooping and hollering and that kind of thing. But, that'll happen also at 18th and Columbia and Adams Mill, where people who would normally try to go south on 18th Street will then have to find some other way to accomplish where they're going. And if it's to come to various establishments in Adams Morgan, they're going to be shunted into side streets, which happens anyway, but it'll be a different nature and it'll be more intense because there's going to be a whole lot of spaces made unavailable. And apart from that, our streets will be flooded with Uber and Lyft drivers, and, you know, the fire safety issues are paramount. You know, if our street is gridlocked with vehicles, then, you know, it's dangerous for residential streets. We're not an adjunct to the commercial area of 18th Street. We're a residential block. 1800 block of Calorama is what I'm talking about. And the same goes for the other side of 18th Street. You know, people live on all those streets. As soon as you turn right, if you're heading north, you're into a residential block, and then you go on to Champlain, it's more residences and so forth, just as you move through the neighborhood. So this is going to have a massive negative impact on traffic, and particularly traffic on Columbia Road, where people, you know, anything that wanted to go down 18th Street will now have to be on Columbia and find some other way around. So, you know, I see nothing about this which is the slightest improvement on previous discussions. In fact, I think it's a lot worse for the bus travelers. I didn't manage to get on in time for the first 20 minutes or so, so I didn't hear all the words that were said, but I have had a chance to review the documents that were shown. And they're atrocious for people who ride the buses, who are, you know, I've lived here for a very long time, and I often ride those buses, and they're largely used by Black and brown folk to get to jobs in this part of the world. So, you know, that's one little point that I think is worth talking about. And, you know, it's an abomination of what 18th Street is. You're trying to create a party zone. That'll be the net effect. And the bid and the businesses will not be satisfied with just closing it one weekend a month. You know, if it's viewed as successful, in quotation marks, it'll be something, there'll be demand to make it more regular or every weekend, you know, and that'll make all the problems that I'm trying to describe a lot worse for residents. I care about the residents. You know, I care about the businesses. I frequent a lot of them in normal times. And a lot of things that were said tonight are not true. For instance, the businesses were not all closed in June 2020. You know, a lot of them were certainly operating in a different manner, and I'm sure some were suffering. But I'll note that we haven't lost one ABC business due to the pandemic in Adams Morgan. And I don't know that they need to be rescued. There's plenty of business. The streeteries are busy, as well as some activity inside. When I walk out in the early part of the evening recently, there's not one person wearing a mask. You know, the ANC's, except me, the ANC's previous resolution on this, you know, talked about making a safe pathway for people to use during the pandemic so that there could be social distancing. Well, that isn't much of an issue anymore, although, you know, with pandemic infections going up in recent times, it could crop up at any time. But, you know, 18th Street is a public street. It's not to be the playground for the ABC establishments in our neighborhood. They've already gotten, you know, practically everyone has a sidewalk cafe, and now they've been given the streeteries until at least the end of 2023 by code. And then you're going to turn the rest of it into, you know, something else that serves the businesses as opposed to the residents and increases our danger, you know, from fire safety, other emergency abilities of the city to get into where they're needed. You know, and everybody else is going to have to change their routes and what they can do and, you know, not be able to plan activities that they would like to do because our streets will be gridlocked. That's just exactly what will be happening. So the Calorama citizens, based on our earlier resolutions, and I'm sure we will, you know, reapprove our past resolutions in this matter, will be against this lock, stock, and barrel. It's an incredible waste of public resources. You know, it's just astounding to me. This street was rebuilt in 2012, and it was rebuilt in a very thoughtful manner, and which was very beneficial to businesses and also to those who are less favoring cars, because there was a travel lane was taken away. A lot of dangerous angled parking was removed. The sidewalks were widened on both sides of the street to benefit pedestrians. The bump outs were put in place so that it would be safer to cross the street. You know, you can't be rebuilding major streets every 10 years. That's not the way it's done. So I really think that this is a terrible idea, and I will be fighting against it with everything I've got. And also, you know, the bid is busy patting itself on the back, and some of the other folks who spoke tonight too, about what a great process it's been. Really, it's a secret process, which has finally come out of the closet with this meeting tonight. So I'll leave it right there. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
I think
Kristen.
Jake has his hand up.
Thanks. Dennis, appreciate your thoughts and your comments, but I'll just note that in my door knocking around the neighborhood and many different emails that I've sent to my list and also as secretary for the ANC, have yet to have heard significant opposition to this. If anything, the neighborhood is very much in support of it. And the idea that somehow shutting this down for cars only is somehow making the street not available to the people, when the entire purpose is to make the street available to people and not vehicles for that time, is I think honestly laughable. So that is my perspective on that.
I just also note that in terms of parking availability, there is currently very little parking on 18th Street because of the streeteries. So I know that there is going to be the traffic study, but I also imagine that there is not going to be much parking, if any. I can't remember if there's a few spots down by Calorama, but I do know that most of this stretch does not currently have any parking.
Yeah, the parking is already quite limited. So yeah, the street closure will not remove very many parking spaces.
Does anyone else have questions before we move to a vote? Dennis, do you have a question?
I don't have a question, but you know, this is one of the weaknesses of Zoom type meetings, where if we were in person, there could be a give and take. But you know, I don't mind that Jake offered his thoughts, and that's fine. I've worked with many of the commissioners and expect to continue to do so. The part, to focus in on parking. For instance, I heard Kristen earlier say that the closure would stay in place throughout the whole weekend. Could somebody not cut me off? Let me stay on and have a little bit of interchange. I do have a question, as a matter of fact. So, is it Friday and Saturday?
So
Sunday included?
What will be in place the whole weekend is the bus rerouting, not the pedestrian zone. The bus rerouting would be in place Friday evening, all day Saturday and all day Sunday. The proposed hours of the street closure right now are 5 p.m. Friday to midnight. And then it would close again Saturday morning around 10 a.m. and would close at midnight, and then a Sunday 10 a.m. to midnight.
Right. So it's really 3 days that people who have business on 18th Street will have to go somewhere else. For instance, people who want to go to the framing store that's near the post office, or if they've got a heavy post, package that they need to get to the post office, will they be able to do that? And then any other business that's not an ABC business that has goods, which there aren't many, I readily agree to that. But, it's not going to be good for all businesses. And the neighborhood will have limited use of 18th Street, very limited, throughout 3 whole days. Well, 2.5 days, I guess, if it starts at 5 p.m. on Fridays. So that's, when I was referring to parking earlier, I was talking about traffic jams, like people who would enter from either direction, from the Columbia Road side or from coming north on 18th Street. You know, there will be there'll be a difficulty finding the parking garage for people. And it's not that typical to go and find, oh, I know where I'll go. I'll go through the alley to go to that parking garage. But and I'm not claiming that there's a lot of parking spaces on 18th Street. There's very, very few with the streeteries. But, you know, as a permanent measure, the streeteries are supposed to go away. And I certainly hope they will, because there's an overemphasis on the use of the public spaces by the restaurants. Everyone who could possibly qualify, who wanted to have a sidewalk cafe, has one. And so it's a very also, here's another point. It's very unfair, and God, if I say this out loud, maybe the bid will start working on that, but it's very unfair to other businesses throughout the neighborhood, like the 1800 block of Columbia, and to a lesser extent towards 16th Street on Columbia, that the 18th Street part gets to have this special privilege and presumably a lot more customers, whereas the other parts, are not getting any sort of assistance. Anyway, there's so much to be said. I think I've said enough, but thank you very much.
Thanks, Dennis. All right, does anyone else have any questions before we move to our 2 votes? Great, if not, then I will make a motion I'll make a motion that it would not be adverse to the community to vote on a letter of support at our next meeting in June, not be adverse to the community to consider advancing a letter of support to the next meeting in June. Can I get a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Great, so that passes, or that we now can consider it. And I'll just note that since the ANC has voted on this several times in the past, I don't think it's, and we will now have 2 weeks before the full commission. I don't think it's adverse to the community to advance this today. All right, any discussion? I think both my fellow commissioners have already voiced their support, and I certainly have voiced my support. So if not, great. So I make a motion to recommend that the full commission write a letter of support for this street closure program. I guess pilot pedestrian zone. I don't know if there's a fancy name. Can I get a sec? I guess, yeah. Can I get a second? Sorry, I can never remember seconds and all of that. There's so many, but I do think we always need seconds at this meeting.
I'll second.
Thanks. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great, that passes 3-0. So Kristen, Brian, David, I think we'll likely have you do a shorter presentation at the meeting in June, and the full commission will consider a letter of support. I think we'll also probably work out whether it makes sense to do a totally new letter. Considering since that last letter of support, I think the commission has entirely turned over. So maybe it makes sense to do a new letter just to demonstrate that the current commission remains in support. All right.
Sure, that sounds great. Thank you all. And probably between now and that June full ANC meeting, we'll have some more things to report since the advisory committee is meeting weekly. So we'll probably have some more to share with you then.
Great. All right. Thanks so much. Thanks, everyone. That is the end of our PZT meeting for this month.
Thanks, everyone.